Writing. The first snow of winter drifted silently across the small town, covering sidewalks, rooftops, and parked cars in a blanket of white. Most people watched the snowfall from the warmth of their homes, sipping coffee or gathering with family. But on a cold bench near the downtown bus station sat 10-year-old Lily Parker and her grandmother, Rose. Lily pulled her thin coat tighter around her body and wrapped one arm around her grandmother's shoulders. "Are you cold?" she asked. Rose smiled weakly. "A little." Lily immediately removed her knitted scarf and placed it around her grandmother's neck. "What about you?" Rose asked. "I'm fine." The answer was a lie. The wind cut through Lily's coat, making her shiver uncontrollably. But she refused to complain. For nearly a year, life had become a struggle. After Lily's parents died in a highway accident, Rose became her guardian. Although she was already 72 years old, she worked part-time cleaning offices and folding laundry at a local hotel. She did everything possible to provide for her granddaughter. For a while, they managed. Their apartment was small, their furniture was old, money was tight, but they were together. Then Rose became sick. What started as occasional fatigue turned into serious health problems. Doctor visits became frequent, medication costs increased, hospital bills arrived one after another. Rose spent her savings. Then she sold family heirlooms. Then she sold her wedding ring. Still, it wasn't enough. Eventually they lost their apartment. Since then they had spent months moving between shelters, churches, and temporary housing programs. Some nights they had a bed. Other nights they didn't. Tonight was one of those nights. The shelter was full, every room occupied, every bed taken. The volunteer apologized repeatedly, but there was simply no space left. So Lily and Rose ended up at the bus station with nowhere else to go. Snowflakes landed on Lily's hair. She brushed them away and looked at her grandmother. Rose's cough had become worse recently. Every coughing fit seemed to leave her exhausted. Lily's stomach twisted with worry. "Grandma, maybe we should go back to the doctor." Rose shook her head. "We can't afford another visit." "But what if you're getting worse?" Rose gently squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out." Lily wanted to believe her. She really did, but fear lived inside her constantly now. Fear of losing the only family she had left. Across the street, a man exited a bookstore carrying a paper bag and a cup of coffee. His name was Ethan Walker. At 45 years old, Ethan owned a successful construction company. Most people considered him fortunate. He had financial security, a beautiful house, and a respected reputation throughout town. Yet every evening he returned to an empty home. 5 years earlier, his wife and daughter had died in a car accident caused by a distracted driver. The tragedy shattered his world. Since then, Ethan buried himself in work. Work required less emotional energy than grief. As he walked toward his truck, something caught his attention. A little girl adjusting a scarf around an elderly woman's shoulders. He paused, then watched. The girl rubbed the woman's hands to keep them warm. A moment later she offered her the last granola bar from her backpack. The old woman refused. The girl insisted. Finally the woman accepted. Ethan couldn't stop staring. The scene reminded him painfully of his daughter. Not because they looked alike, but because of the love he saw. The protectiveness, the selflessness, the determination. For several moments he stood motionless. Then he crossed the street. Lily immediately noticed him approaching. She instinctively moved closer to Rose. Ethan stopped several feet away. He didn't want to frighten them. "Good evening," he said softly. Neither responded. "My name is Ethan." Lily studied him carefully. "What do you want?" Her voice wasn't rude, just cautious. Ethan understood. "I was wondering if you've had dinner." "We're okay." Again, he understood. People struggling often said they were okay even when they clearly weren't. Ethan held up the paper bag. "The bakery gave me extra sandwiches." "Not true. But I can't finish them." Lily glanced at the bag. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the cold air. Her stomach growled. Embarrassed, she looked away. Ethan pretended not to notice. He set the bag on the bench. "You don't have to take it." Then he stepped back. "Have a good night." Without waiting for an answer, he walked away. Rose opened the bag. Inside were sandwiches, fruit, bottled water, and pastries. Lily stared. Why would he do that? Rose smiled gently. Because some people are kind. The next evening Ethan returned. This time carrying 2 cups of hot soup. The evening after that he brought blankets. A few days later he delivered warm gloves. Gradually Lily became less suspicious. She still remained cautious, but she no longer viewed Ethan as a threat. One snowy afternoon he found them sitting inside a church lobby. Rose looked pale, much paler than usual. Her cough sounded painful. Ethan sat nearby. Have you seen a doctor recently? Rose hesitated. Not in several weeks. Why? She looked down. Neither of them needed to answer. The reason was obvious. Money. Ethan nodded slowly. That evening he made several phone calls. The following morning he arrived with information about a community health clinic willing to evaluate Rose at no cost. Rose initially refused. We've already accepted too much help. Ethan looked directly at her. No, you haven't. His voice carried surprising emotion. You deserve help. Eventually she agreed. The appointment revealed troubling news. Rose's condition was serious. Without immediate treatment, her health would continue deteriorating rapidly. The estimated costs were overwhelming. Even reduced medical fees seemed impossible. When Lily overheard the conversation, panic filled her chest. That night she sat beside Rose while her grandmother slept. Tears silently rolled down her cheeks. Ethan noticed. He sat beside her. For a while neither spoke. Finally Lily whispered, "I'm scared." Ethan looked at her. About what? She wiped her eyes. Everything. Her voice trembled. If something happens to Grandma, I'll have nobody. Ethan's heart tightened. Lily continued speaking. My parents are gone. Another tear slipped down her face. She's all I have. The words struck him deeply. Because years earlier he had spoken almost identical words. After losing his wife and daughter. After sitting alone in a hospital hallway. After realizing his family was gone. He remembered that pain, that loneliness, that feeling of helplessness. Ethan swallowed hard. Then he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone. Lily shook her head. Yes, I am. No. She looked at him. His eyes glistened. No, you're not. Something in his voice made her pause. For the first time she realized this man understood heartbreak. Not because he'd read about it. Not because he'd heard stories. Because he'd lived it. The following week brought more devastating news. Doctors recommended treatment immediately. Delaying care would be dangerous. But treatment required money. A lot of money. Money neither Lily nor Rose possessed. The situation seemed hopeless. Ethan spent several sleepless nights thinking. He reviewed bank statements, business accounts, investments, personal finances. He could help, but the amount required was significant. Then his eyes drifted toward the garage. Inside sat a restored 1968 Mustang. His most treasured possession. The car had belonged to his late wife. They had spent years restoring it together. Every detail carried memories. Every scratch told a story. Selling it felt impossible. The Mustang represented one of the last tangible connections to the family he lost. For several days he wrestled with the decision. Then one evening he visited Lily and Rose. Rose struggled through another coughing fit. Lily sat beside her holding her hand. The girl looked exhausted, terrified, heartbroken. At that moment Ethan knew exactly what he needed to do. 3 days later the Mustang was gone. Sold. Every dollar went directly toward Rose's treatment. When Lily learned what happened, she stared at him in disbelief. You sold your car? Ethan nodded. The one your wife loved. Again he nodded. But why? His answer came immediately. Because people matter more. Lily's eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to do that. Yes, Ethan said quietly. I did. Without warning Lily threw her arms around him. The hug caught him completely off guard. For a moment he froze. Then he slowly hugged her back. Emotion surged through him. For years he had kept everyone at a distance. Walls built from grief. Walls built from fear. Walls built from loss. In that moment those walls began to crumble. Treatment started immediately. The following months were difficult. Some days brought progress. Other days brought setbacks. Rose endured painful procedures and exhausting therapy. Through it all Lily never left her side. Neither did Ethan. Every appointment, every hospital visit, every difficult conversation, he was there. Doctors gradually noticed improvement. The treatments were working. Hope slowly returned. One afternoon a nurse shared their story online. She described a little girl caring for her grandmother. She described a businessman who sacrificed something precious to help strangers. The story spread faster than anyone expected. Thousands shared it, then hundreds of thousands. Messages poured in from around the country. People were moved by the compassion, inspired by the sacrifice, touched by the love. Donations began arriving. $5, $20, $100, then thousands more. Within weeks enough money had been raised to cover medical expenses, housing costs, and future educational support for Lily. Local businesses donated furniture. Restaurants provided meals. Volunteers offered assistance. The community rallied around them. When a small apartment became available, donors helped furnish it completely. The day Lily received the keys felt unreal. She stared at them silently. Then tears filled her eyes. "They're really ours." The landlord smiled. "Yes." Lily looked at Rose, then at Ethan, then she burst into tears. For the first time in nearly a year, they had a home. Move-in day became a celebration. Neighbors arrived carrying boxes. Volunteers assembled furniture. Children from nearby apartments welcomed Lily. Laughter filled rooms that had been empty only hours earlier. As everyone worked, Ethan stood quietly near the doorway. Watching, smiling, remembering. Lily noticed. She walked over. "Why aren't you helping?" Ethan laughed. "I already helped." She crossed her arms. "You're still standing there." He smiled. "I like seeing you happy." Lily looked around the apartment. The couch, the kitchen, the dining table, the bedroom, everything felt impossible. Then she looked back at Ethan. And suddenly hugged him again. This time longer, tighter, more emotional. "You saved us." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "No." "Yes, you did." He gently shook his head. "No." Lily looked confused. Ethan glanced toward Rose, then back at her. His voice trembled. "You saved me." The room grew quiet. Nearby, volunteers paused. Several people turned to listen. Ethan swallowed hard. "For years I thought my life ended when I lost my family." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "I stopped living." The room remained silent. Then he looked directly at Lily. "Meeting you reminded me what love looks like." Lily's eyes widened. "You showed me courage." He looked at Rose. "And you showed me strength." Several volunteers wiped tears from their eyes. Ethan smiled through emotion. "You gave me a reason to care again." Rose reached over and squeezed his hand. For a moment nobody spoke. The silence carried more meaning than words ever could. Months continued passing. Rose's health improved dramatically. Doctors were optimistic. Her energy slowly returned. Her smile became more frequent. Lily flourished in school. Her grades improved. She joined art classes. She made new friends. Life finally felt stable. One spring afternoon the three of them visited a park. Flowers bloomed across the landscape. Children laughed nearby. Birds chirped overhead. The world felt brighter than it had in years. They sat together beneath a large oak tree. For a while they simply enjoyed the sunshine. Then Lily broke the silence. "Can I ask something?" "Of course," Ethan replied. She looked thoughtful. "Do you think people meet for a reason?" Ethan smiled. "I think sometimes they do." Lily nodded slowly. "Because I think we met for a reason." Rose smiled. "So do I." Ethan looked at both of them. His heart felt full, a feeling he once believed he'd never experience again. Lily reached for both their hands. One in each of hers. Then she smiled. A beautiful smile filled with gratitude and love. "I used to think Grandma was all I had." Tears formed in Rose's eyes. Lily continued. "But I was wrong." She squeezed Ethan's hand. "We have each other now." Ethan looked away briefly, overwhelmed with emotion. Then he nodded. "Yes." His voice cracked. "We do." As the sun slowly began setting across the park, three people sat together beneath the golden light. A lonely businessman who believed happiness was gone forever. A brave little girl who refused to abandon the person she loved most. An elderly grandmother whose strength carried them through impossible circumstances. They weren't connected by blood. Yet somehow they had become a family. A family born from compassion. Built through sacrifice. Strengthened by love. And as the evening sky turned shades of gold and orange, it became clear that sometimes the greatest miracles arrive in the form of strangers. People who appear unexpectedly. People who change lives forever. People who remind us that even in the darkest moments, kindness still exists. Because one act of compassion can become the beginning of an entirely new life. And sometimes, when someone says, "I'm all she has, I won't let her get hurt," the world answers through the heart of a stranger willing to help. The tears that followed weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. The kind that prove love still has the power to heal even the deepest wounds.